The weight of empty days, Grace. Bennett stood in the doorway of Riverside Veterans Center, her fingers gripping the strap of her worn purse until her knuckles went white. The building smelled like industrial cleaner and burnt coffee, nothing like the sleek office towers where she'd once commanded presentations and managed six-figure campaigns. That world felt like someone else's memory now. "You don't have to save anyone," her sister Bethany had said over the phone that morning. "Just show up. Just be somewhere that isn't your car." Grace hadn't told Bethany about the last 2 nights, how she'd parked behind a grocery store, reclined her seat as far as it would go, and pretended the steering wheel wasn't digging into her ribs. 3 months since the layoffs, 2 months since her landlord's final notice. The descent had been so swift, so complete, that she sometimes wondered if she'd imagined her old life entirely. First time volunteering, a woman with kind eyes and a clipboard appeared beside her. Her name tag read Vanessa, volunteer coordinator. "Yes, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do." "Perfect. We need someone to organize the library. It's quiet work, mostly sorting donations. Does that sound manageable?" Grace nodded, grateful she wouldn't have to make small talk or pretend to be the person she used to be. The library was a converted storage room with 3 mismatched bookcases and cardboard boxes stacked against every wall. Dust motes danced in the afternoon light, filtering through a single high window. Grace sat cross-legged on the floor and opened the first box, pulling out dog-eared thrillers and self-help books with optimistic titles that made her throat tight. She'd been working for maybe an hour when she heard the rhythmic sound of sawing from somewhere nearby. The wood shop Vanessa had mentioned was next door. "Excuse me, miss?" Grace looked up to find a little girl standing in the doorway, clutching a picture book about dinosaurs. She had wild brown curls and was missing both front teeth. "Are you the library lady? Can you read to me? Daddy's busy making a table and I'm bored." Before Grace could answer, a man appeared behind the child, wiping sawdust from his hands onto his jeans. He was tall and lean, with dark hair touched by early gray at the temples and eyes that looked permanently tired. His left forearm bore a tattoo of coordinates, probably from a deployment, Grace guessed. "Lily, we talked about this. The volunteers aren't babysitters." His voice was quiet, almost apologetic. "It's okay," Grace heard herself say. "I could use a break." The man studied her for a moment with an intensity that should have felt uncomfortable, but somehow didn't. "I'm Owen Hartley. That's my daughter, Lily. We're here most afternoons." Grace Bennett. "You don't have to—" "I want to," Grace said, and realized with surprise that she meant it. Owen nodded slowly, then retreated to the woodshop. Lily plopped down beside Grace, opening her book with the supreme confidence of someone who'd never doubted they were wanted. As Grace began to read about a triceratops learning to be brave, something in her chest loosened just slightly, the first deep breath she'd taken in months. Building in silence, Grace returned to Riverside 3 days later. Then 4 days that week, then every weekday. The library became her sanctuary, a place where her purpose was simple and her failures didn't follow her through the door. She alphabetized fiction, created a children's section, and built a reading nook from donated pillows. Owen was always in the woodshop, the steady rhythm of his tools like a heartbeat through the wall. They developed an unspoken routine. Grace would arrive at 9. Owen would nod from his workbench. Lily would bounce in after school at 3:30, dividing her time between both rooms. It was Lily who forced them together. "Daddy says you should eat lunch with us," she announced one Thursday, hands on her hips like a tiny general. "In the garden. He made extra sandwiches, but he's too shy to ask." Grace found Owen at a picnic table under an oak tree, looking mortified. She wasn't supposed to say the shy part. "I appreciate shy," Grace said, sitting across from him. "Confident people exhausted me in my old life." "What was your old life?" "Marketing executive? Corner office. I convinced people to buy things they didn't need." She accepted half a turkey sandwich. "I was good at it. Then the company restructured, and apparently I became something they didn't need." Owen unwrapped his own sandwich slowly. "I was good at being a Marine. 12 years. Then an IED in Helmand Province made me jump at car backfires and forget where I am when helicopters fly overhead. The Corps decided I was something they didn't need either." It was the most honest conversation Grace had experienced in months. No platitudes, no leisure speeches about resilience. Just two people sitting in their broken places together. How do you do it? Grace asked. Rebuild after everything falls apart? Some days I don't. Owen looked toward the wood shop. But Lily needs breakfast and clean clothes and someone to check her homework. So I show up, build tables, try not to disappear inside my own head. He met her eyes. Gets a little easier when you're not doing it alone. Over the following weeks, their lunches became daily. Owen talked about Lily's mother, who'd left when their daughter was 2, unable to handle his nightmares and flashbacks. Grace confessed she'd been sleeping in her car, showering at a gym she could barely afford to keep. There's a women's shelter, Owen started. I know. I can't admit I'm that person yet. What person? The kind who needs charity, who failed so completely she has nothing. Owen was quiet for a long moment. Lily has an art show next Tuesday. School cafeteria, 6 o'clock. Would you come? She keeps asking if her library friend can see her paintings. Grace felt tears prick her eyes. You don't have to invite me to things. It's not pity. It's... Owen struggled for words. It's wanting you there. Grace went to the art show. Lily's painting was a house with 3 stick figures labeled Daddy, Me, and Miss Grace. Standing in that fluorescent-lit cafeteria, Grace felt something she'd thought was gone forever. She felt like she belonged somewhere. Cracks in the foundation. The thunderstorm hit on a Wednesday afternoon without warning. Grace was shelving books when the first crack of thunder shook the building. In the woodshop, something metal clattered to the floor. She found Owen backed into a corner, hands pressed over his ears, eyes squeezed shut. His breathing came in short, sharp gasps. Lily stood frozen in the doorway, clutching her backpack. Lily, go find Vanessa, Grace said calmly. Tell her your dad needs his quiet space. The girl ran. Grace approached Owen slowly, keeping her voice low and steady. Owen, you're at Riverside. You're in California. You're safe. Can you hear me? His eyes opened but didn't focus. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Listen to my voice. Name 5 things you can see. It was something she'd learned in her own therapy, back when she could still afford sessions. Slowly, painfully, Owen came back. He named the workbench, the saw, his hands, Grace's shoes, the door. 4 things you can touch. He reached out and Grace took his hand. His palm was calloused and trembling. Your hand, the floor, my shirt, the wall. They went through all 5 senses until his breathing evened. Vanessa appeared with Owen's emergency contact information and medication. By the time the storm passed, Owen was sitting on the floor, exhausted and humiliated. Lily shouldn't see me like this, he whispered. Lily sees you trying. That's what matters. That evening, Grace sat in her car in the Riverside parking lot, unable to make herself drive to her usual sleeping spot. She'd been living this way for 3 weeks now. Her sister had offered help, but Grace's pride was a wall she couldn't scale. Owen knocked on her window, Lily already buckled in his truck nearby. I know, he said when Grace rolled down the window. Vanessa told me she's worried about you. How long? Grace couldn't make herself answer. I have a guest room, Lily's old nursery before she graduated to the big girl room. It's yours if you want it. Not charity, rent-free labor. You help with Lily after school, I help you get back on your feet. Owen, please don't say no because you're proud. I need help with Lily and you need a safe place to sleep. Let it be simple. Nothing's ever simple. Then let it be complicated together. Grace looked at this man who'd let her see him at his worst without apology, who'd somehow seen her invisible suffering without making her explain it. Just until I find a job, she said. However long you need. That night, Grace slept in an actual bed for the first time in weeks. Down the hall, she could hear Owen reading Lily a bedtime story. The house smelled like the spaghetti they'd shared for dinner and the lavender detergent Owen used on the sheets. It smelled like possibility. New Blueprints living with Owen and Lily was nothing like Grace expected. She'd anticipated awkwardness, but instead found rhythm. Owen made coffee at 6. Grace got Lily ready for school. They traded off cooking dinner. In the evenings, after Lily went to bed, they sat in the living room, Owen refinishing furniture, Grace applying to jobs on her laptop. Tell me about this one, Owen would say, and Grace would read job descriptions aloud, parsing which opportunities felt real and which felt like settling. Grace started attending a depression support group at Riverside on Thursday evenings. Owen went to his PTSD group on Tuesdays. They never asked each other what was discussed, but they both came home lighter, more present. One Saturday, Owen invited Grace to the wood shop. "You've been watching me work for months. Time to try it yourself." He taught her to measure twice, cut once, how to sand with the grain, how to trust her hands to create something from nothing. Their fingers brushed as he adjusted her grip on the chisel. Neither pulled away. "You're good at this," Owen said, standing close enough that Grace could feel his warmth. "I'm good at following instructions." "No, you're good at building. There's a difference." Grace turned to face him, sawdust caught in her hair, and found Owen looking at her with an expression she'd forgotten existed, like she was someone worth seeing. "Worth staying for." "I don't know how to do this," Grace whispered. "Do what?" "Feel something good without waiting for it to be taken away." Owen reached up, gently brushing sawdust from her cheek. "Maybe we both learn together." When he kissed her, it tasted like coffee and second chances. Grace kissed him back, letting herself fall into something uncertain and terrifying and real. They pulled apart at the sound of small feet running toward the wood shop. "Daddy! Miss Grace! I finished my book report." Lily burst through the door, then stopped, her eyes going wide. "Were you kissing?" Owen and Grace looked at each other, then at Lily. "Yes," Grace said, because lying to a 6-year-old seemed worse than the truth. "Does this mean you're staying forever?" Lily asked. Grace faltered. "She's staying as long as she wants," Owen said firmly. "No pressure. No expectations." But 3 days later, when Grace received a call about an interview for community program coordinator at Riverside Veterans Center, she realized she didn't want to leave. Not the center, not this makeshift family, not Owen, with his quiet strength and gentle hands, not this life they were building from broken pieces. Foundations, strong enough to hold Grace, got the job. Not because of pity or proximity, but because the interview panel saw what she'd created in the library, how she'd turned a storage room into a sanctuary, how veterans specifically requested her help finding books, how she'd started a reading program for volunteers' children. "You rebuilt something here," Vanessa told her. "Now make it official." 6 weeks into the job, Owen asked Grace to meet him in the library after hours. She found it lit by battery candles, Lily's drawings taped to the walls alongside the books. "This is where I first saw you really smile," Owen said. "Right here, reading to Lily. I thought you were just another volunteer passing through, but you stayed. You kept showing up even when everything was hard." He knelt down, pulling a small wooden box from his pocket. Inside was a simple silver ring with a tiny engraved oak tree, the same oak from the garden where they'd shared their first lunch. "I'm not promising perfect. I still have bad days. Lily will always be my priority. And I know you're still finding your feet again. But Grace, I want to build a life with you. A real one. Will you marry me?" Grace pulled him to his feet, tears streaming down her face. "Yes! God, yes!" Lily burst from behind a bookshelf where she'd been hiding. "I knew it." "Can I be the flower girl? Can Miss Grace be my mom now?" "If she wants to be," Owen said, looking at Grace. "I want to be," Grace whispered, pulling Lily into their embrace. They married 6 months later in Riverside's community room, surrounded by veterans and volunteers and the people who'd witnessed their reconstruction. Grace wore a simple white dress. Owen wore his dress uniform, managing his anxiety with breathing exercises Grace had helped him refine. Lily scattered flower petals with theatrical enthusiasm. Vanessa officiated, reading words about how love isn't finding someone perfect, but finding someone worth fighting for through imperfection. A year later, Grace stood in the backyard of the house that was now truly hers, watching Owen teach Lily to build a birdhouse. Her daughter, because Lily was hers now, adoption papers signed and framed, hammered with fierce concentration. Owen's hand steadied hers, patient and sure. "Mom! Look, I'm building!" Lily called. "Mom!" The word still made Grace's heart stutter with joy. She joined them at the workbench, picking up sandpaper. Three people who'd been broken in different ways, now building something together. The birdhouse was crooked, imperfect, held together with too much glue and love. It was perfect. Owen met her eyes over Lily's head and smiled. That rare, full smile he reserved for moments when the world felt safe. Grace smiled back, understanding now what she hadn't believed a year ago. Sometimes falling apart is just the beginning. Sometimes the broken pieces fit together better than they ever did whole. Sometimes you don't find home. You build it, nail by nail, day by day, with people brave enough to stay. And sometimes, when you have nothing left, that's exactly when you have room to receive everything.